increasing trend continues.
Tonight, Indigenous Services addressing the rise in COVID cases.
We go where they are in the parks, down by the water.
And Anishnawbe Health in Toronto goes mobile. Good evening, welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Last fall, you'll recall an angry mob surrounded a lobster pound in Nova Scotia with Mi'kmaq fishers inside. Well, now it's alleged that it was the manager of the pound who gave the keys to the non-Indigenous fishermen and gave them, quote, permission to dump the Mi'kmaq lobster catch. Angel Moore reports.
Mi'kmaq fisher Shai Francis of Sabaganagati First Nation was at the West Pubnico lobster pound last fall when people inside were destroying the Mi'kmaq lobster catch. Recently, Francis saw a Facebook post in the North Atlantic Commercial Fishermen Group. It was posted by James Muse, the manager of the lobster pound, and it said he gave everyone permission to go and take the lobster out of the building. So if you would like to call me and would like to talk to you and your lawyers to get the charges dismissed. Muse also posted his phone number, and Francis called him to verify the post.
He said that he was the manager of that pound and that he gave permission to those fellers to take the keys and open them up and do as you will with the crates and the lobster that's in there.
When we called the number ourselves, Muse verified that this was his number.
Hi, I'm looking to speak with James Muse.
Yes, Sam.
Is this him?
Yep.
But he declined to comment. Last week, the Nova Scotia RCMP charged 23 people, 15 with break and enter, and 8 with break and enter and mischief. The non-Indigenous fishers reacted in violence because they view the fishery launched by Sabaganagati First Nation as illegal. Francis is shocked. Muse is suggesting the charges should be dropped.
My blood pressure rose, not just because I was there that night and had to deal with non-natives taking the lobster, trying to terrorize us that night.
When asked if there was any chance charges would be dropped, the RCMP said this is an ongoing investigation before the courts. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Jabuktuk, Halifax.
In Ottawa, Indigenous Services Canada gave another update today on the COVID-19 pandemic, including vaccine rollouts that continue in Indigenous communities. As Jamie Pashagumskum reports, federal officials are concerned about the rise of COVID-19 cases in our communities.
When you look at, the trend over the past couple of weeks, the increasing trend continues.
Indigenous Services Medical Officer Tom Wong called the rise in cases alarming, especially in the prairie provinces. Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller says the Christmas holiday was a factor.
People let their guard down, for sure. It's human nature. It's very difficult to ask Indigenous communities to do something that we ourselves wouldn't do in non-Indigenous communities, spread from big urban centers into more remote communities.
Indigenous Services says perimeter protection plays a big role in restricting travel and keeping the virus out of vulnerable communities. In terms of continued vaccination efforts, Indigenous Services assured the delay of the delivery of the Pfizer vaccine will not impact vaccination of Indigenous communities in the north, where Moderna vaccinations are well underway.
And it's always been planned, to offer Moderna vaccine because of, its ease of transportation. It just needs a minus 20 degrees Celsius instead of minus 80. And it can be stored in the refrigerator for a month versus, only be able to store in the refrigerator of a Pfizer vaccine for 5 days.
Concerns were raised for protecting vulnerable urban Indigenous communities from the virus.
You're dealing with a phase of the rollout that hasn't quite come yet. Obviously, our concern with that high side in Vancouver is top of mind. In Winnipeg, this is sort of the phase 1B or 2 of the rollout of the vaccine when the numbers get larger and reflecting the need to to distribute vaccines that are to those that are the most vulnerable.
Overall, Indigenous Services says vaccinations are rolling out as planned, and they are happy with the progress so far. Jamie Pashagumskum, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Quebec Premier François Legault says he will not be exempting the homeless from the province-wide 8 p.m. curfew. The question came after an Innu man was found dead near a shelter forced to close overnight. The body of 51-year-old Raphael Andre was found in a portable toilet on Sunday morning. He was a client at a shelter that was ordered by Public Health to pause its overnight operations. Several of the community's homeless have been ticketed over $1,000 for breaking the curfew, but hundreds more have reportedly been escorted to shelters. It's speculated that Andre may have been hiding from police at the time of his death, but Legault believes making an exemption will cause other problems.
Right now, the police people are doing a very good job. They use their judgment, and if we change the rule and say you cannot give a ticket to somebody who is saying that he's an homeless, you may have some people that will pretend to be an homeless. So I think that right now it's working well. Police.
Anishnawbe Health in Toronto has offered services to the city's Indigenous population for over 30 years, but the pandemic has forced the organization to come up with new ways to continue its work. Annette Francis explains.
Yeah, Anishnawbe Health. Can you cover your mouth with your mask?
These small mobile teams are providing essential services to some of the city's most vulnerable.
We go where the people are. That's the whole point of our project, is to reach the isolated, vulnerable populations that are not able to access the regular venues. So we go where they are, in the parks, down by the water, in the underhoused areas, and we reach them where they are.
When the pandemic hit, Anishnawbe Health had to find other ways to continue its primary care and mental health services. So it purchased 2 mobile units to go roadside each day. And the organization hopes to expand those services at some point to provide vaccines.
That'll be part of the process. We're a community health center, so as such, all community health centers in the province will get allocations so that they can move forward towards vaccinating communities. We're on the ground in the community. It'll make sense to, at some point in time, ramp up through that kind of model. I'm sure that's under consideration as we move through the levels of providing the vaccine.
Registered nurse Jessica Morris is a team member. She says it means a lot to be out here each day providing COVID tests.
I think it's super important for us to reach the vulnerable population of Toronto, where we're not asking everyone for an OHIP card. They don't need ID. We have just better access to anyone who needs this testing done. They don't have to make an appointment. They don't have to call. They can just come out and walk by and we'll get them done.
So far, the units have done over 6,000 tests.
We're averaging about over 100 contacts a day, which is amazing. My team is incredible. And we have streamlined our system so that you can come to the mobile and everything, your registration and your testing is done right there. So there's no waits in the lineups. And we also have a really very detailed master tool, client tracker tool, so that we can find you if your tests are positive. We can locate you if you're even when you're underhoused and not housed.
Until the vaccines are available, the mobile units will continue to provide roadside testing and mental health services and supports. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Toronto.
New American President Joe Biden was sworn into office this morning. Environmental groups and the Gwich'in Nation are celebrating one of his first executive orders, a moratorium on oil and gas drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in Alaska. The 7.6 million hectare reserve is home to many endangered species and is the birthing ground for the porcupine caribou, which are a major food source for the Gwich'in Nation. Last year, the Trump administration announced it would auction off 600,000 hectares to oil and gas exploration. But despite making last-minute offers on the land during his final days of presidency, only 3 companies in Alaska actually made bids.
It's been a morning just full of tears and relief and feeling so hopeful and elated that President Biden is going to support the Gwich'in people, the Gwich'in Nation, to help us protect the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge.
We need to take a break, but still ahead, what about a fine or a jail time for those caught faking an Indigenous identity to get a job or grant money? A filmmaker thinks that it's an idea whose time has come. Stay with us. In the wake of yet another artist being outed as falsely claiming an Indigenous identity, a Haida filmmaker is calling for the creation of an Indigenous Identification Act. Tamara Bell says it would hopefully deter fraudsters from impersonating Indigenous people to get jobs or grant money. She joins us now to explain how it would work. So, Tamara, the act that you're proposing is similar to what exists already in the United States, the Indian Arts and Crafts Act. Can you give us a little bit of the gist of what that is and what's required for authentication?
Well, the authentication is handled by each sovereign nation. So there's a lot of confusion in terms of, well, how are you going to authenticate people? But it's actually authenticated already by the government. So you've got your sovereign nations who authenticate you. And then you've also got the government involved. So people think that we're going to intervene. We're not intervening. Those methods already exist. This is simply an act to say that if you are fraudulently saying that you're Indigenous, that you could possibly be criminally have charges pressed against you, $250,000 fine or a 5-year prison term. Some people say there shouldn't be a prison term, but if an act doesn't have teeth, people are not going to act accordingly. So if you look at, like, say, for example, in Canada, if we have jobs and money and a whole bunch of people from other countries taking high-level positions, there's laws in place to prevent, say, a whole bunch of German people coming over and then taking up tons of positions that are meant for Canadians without being authenticated. So those things are already in place. So I'm not proposing that. I'm proposing consequences to actions.
Love it. Now, you've said that this is widespread in the arts and film industry, whereby non-Indigenous people suddenly discover some old Indigenous root and then go to access funding that's meant for Indigenous creators. You know, who are you looking? Is it just the arts world that should enshrine this act, or do you want to see it more broadly applied, like to politics, jobs, that sort of thing?
Well, it needs to be broadly applied. When you look at that academia. It's infiltrated academia. It's infiltrated. So say, for example, in my sister's law school, when she was going to UBC and studying law, I'd say 30% of the people in her university were not Indigenous, but they claimed Indigenous identity. So those high-level jobs, if they enter into a job and self-declare themselves as Indigenous, we actually are not protecting our economies. So we have an Indigenous economy that we're trying to protect. So when we lost the Keystone Pipeline in Canada, Trudeau immediately jumped in and said, we're not going to lose revenue, we're not going to lose jobs. But why is it okay for Indigenous people to lose jobs? And why is it okay for us to not have control over who declares and who doesn't declare Indigenous ancestry without validating evidence? There's a lot of charlatans out there, and it's a common term called pretendians, which is people assuming Indigenous identity when they're not, because it's profitable for their career or it's profitable for, their pocketbook. And I think, when you look at it in jobs and statistics and information, when you look at like the amount of revenue that is being lost because we're not feeding our Indigenous economy, we're actually not feeding people literally. And when you talk about the arts, it's an incredibly painful. I've read all of the stories about how the arts have been infiltrated, and it literally broke my heart. And there's an underbelly to this story. Once a charlatan is revealed, there's a playbook. So this didn't get covered in anything, but I want to say it because there was a number of elders who supported this act, and they were all from across the country. And what happens is that the playbook says you get found out that you're not Indigenous, you do a DNA test, and once the DNA test comes back that you might have a sliver of like Indigenous ancestry, and then the next thing is to go to our elders. Now, so there's elders who are being called, solicited, they've already gone through enough. And so they don't sometimes have social media, they're not on the internet, and they're actually being targeted to validate the fraudulent career of a person who's claiming Indigenous ancestry. So I think that there's many layers to this story. I know people are very upset about the bill and what I've proposed, and I'm sorry if people are deeply upset and very angry at me. Really, the intent is to protect our artists, our elders, our academia, our people, and not attack, I'm there, but please don't attack the elders and especially on social media, because that's 100% inappropriate.
So what's the next step for this act to take effect? What has to happen?
Well, the next act is presented to senators. So I've already sent things out to 2 senators. I'm in the process of sending something out to another senator. So it's going to go to the Senate, and then there's going to be the legislation drafted, and it's very similar to an existing legislation in the United States. So it's not revolutionary. The only reason I came out and I decided to say something is that I saw how badly traumatized our community was. And when you look at the ongoing theft, it's almost like they stole one of the most precious amulets we've ever had that's been our possession for thousands of years. And then they go to the people that they stole it from and said, now can you protect my career after I stole this from you? Yeah. And so this is the injustice. So I'm here because I don't want elders to be targeted. I'm here because I think that we have a bright moment here where we can define in this seminal moment who we are as Indigenous people, who owns the culture, who gives us the right to tell our stories, who gives us the right to protect our jobs, who allows us, why do people not care about our Indigenous economies? Shouldn't we care? We should care. We make our living from this. So when people are taking our jobs and taking up space, they're actually taking food off of our plate. And I've been hungry. I know what it's like. And it's horrible and it's terrible. And for people to just come in and take Indigenous identity, they really cheapen our trauma, our genocide, our history. And it makes me incredibly sad. I was heartbroken. And I still am. I'm still heartbroken. But I think that as Indigenous people, we're strong, we're compassionate, we're resilient. We've got Indigenous intelligentsia that are amazing, who are going to figure out this situation. And I am so grateful that we have those academics there who are going to move things forward and move the dialogue forward and protect us, protect our Indigenous economies.
I love this. Tamara, I don't think you need to apologize for anything that you'd said. Sorry that people are angry. That's their problem. I thank you for taking time to join us today and share this with us.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you very much for your time.
Time for another break. Up next, we dive into native TikTok and the incredible talent that's found on that app, so stay with us. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Today's photo of the day comes to us from near Gillam, Manitoba. Looks like a great shot of a frozen lake with some fresh snowfall there. Thanks to Lawrence Saunders for this photo. Of course, all of our viewers can send their photos to share at aptn.ca. You can include as many of the details as possible, and your photo might be our next photo of the day. To the east coast, we've got -2 in snow for St. John's, -4 in sunshine for Halifax. La Grande River, snow, -20. Kuujjuaq, -14 in snow. Sept-Îles, sunshine, -12 degrees. -4 in some snow for Montreal. North Bay, 0 in snow. Snow also for Sault Ste. Marie, -10 there. Kapuskasing, snow, -8. Timmins, snow, -5. 19 and -19 in sunshine for Norway House, -20 for Puckatawagan. Minus 14 and sunny for Winnipeg. Minus 13 and snow for Dauphin. Yorkton, minus 11 and snow. Minus 10 for Regina and Saskatoon, snowing there too. Minus 16 and some sunshine for Uranium City. Minus 17 and snow for Stony Rapids. Minus 12 and snow for Fort Chip. Minus 4 and snow for Grand Prairie. Sunshine, minus 3 for Lethbridge. Minus 3 and snow for Medicine Hat. Sunny and minus 2 in Kamloops. Minus 5 and sunshine for Quesnel. Minus 5 for Smithers and Prince George, sunny there. Same with Fort Nelson. Minus 16 and sunshine for Beaver Creek. Clear, minus 18 for Old Crow. Mix of sun and cloud, minus 13 for Norman Wells. Fort Liard and Trout Lake, both sunny and minus 7. Clear, minus 27 for Sax Harbor. Minus 24 for Polytech. Minus 26 and snow for Baker Lake. New Yacht, minus 21 and some cloud. Clear and minus 19 for Arctic Bay. Igloolik, snow, minus 17. Kinyat, minus 3 and snow. You don't have to be on TikTok to know TikTok. The app giant is everywhere. The content often shared widely on other social media platforms and sometimes even making the news. This afternoon, we put native TikTok in focus, showcasing some of the incredible content creators behind the hashtag are making.
Yeah, the thing I love about native TikTok is that the Indigenous folk there are able to take social media, which lacks representation for Indigenous people and where there's little space for us to showcase who we are. They're able to take this space and create a community where there is none, and at the same time showcase and give representation to all the unique and diverse Indigenous groups that are in Turtle Island. So in that way, we're like dispelling this myth that Indigenous people are all the same. And on TikTok, you can show that like Indigenous people come in all shapes and colors and sizes, and we speak different languages and all that kind of stuff. That's my favorite part of native TikTok.
It's incredible. And just the talent out there. I want to go to another one of your videos. Actually, we'll do 2 of yours back to back if we can.
Hey guys, I'm a traditional Métis jigger, and I get a lot of comments asking me how I ate dinner. So I thought I'd show you. Come on, let's go. Ah, yeah, my favorite time, dinner time. Jig, 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 diddly, 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 diddly. Ah, get it, Kai? Diddly, 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 diddly. I'm making my way downtown, jigging fast. Base is past, and I'm settlement bound. Diddly, 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 diddly. Now, lucky for me, the Harvey's is only across the street, because, you know, is tired, but now we've arrived at our destination. Good, because we're getting hungry, working up a sweat, still on point. Go up to the lady, be like, yo, get me an anti-burger and a twisted tea, stat. Alright, hi tits.
If you want to see that second video and a whole bunch more, you can check out the full episode of In Focus on the APTN News YouTube channel, or you can take time to explore the hashtag native TikTok. You will find lots of love there. We're all out of time for your midweek news. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Thanks for joining us, and I leave you now with some images from Caledonia, Ontario, where 6 months into a blockade by the Indigenous activists over a land dispute, the section was reopened today. We'll have more on that story in the days to come, but for now, good night.